Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're jumping right back in time to witness the day the Earth literally cracked open. We're going to dive deep into a moment when a supervolcano nearly wiped out civilization before it even truly began. And more importantly, we're going to uncover the incredible, science-backed secrets of how humanity actually survived what was probably the harshest test in our entire history.
So, to really understand this, we need to drop right into the terrifying reality of 74,000 BC. Picture this. You wake up, you look up, and instead of a blue sky, there's just this choking, horizon-to-horizon gray blanket. The air literally tastes like burnt rock and sulfur. It's a morning where the sun just never rises, and with every single breath you take, microscopic shards of volcanic glass are settling deep into your lungs. The local rivers, they're turning into toxic sludge, and the temperature is in an absolute freefall. Now remember, you don't even know what a volcano is. All you know is that the world is ending. That was the grim reality of the Toba supereruption.
Section 1. Anatomy of a supervolcano. Let's figure out what we're actually dealing with here. Geologists measure these absolute monsters using something called the Volcanic Explosivity Index, or VEI for short. Now, this is a logarithmic scale from 0 to 8, which basically means every single step up is a tenfold increase in the sheer volume of ash, rock, and gas that gets blasted out of the Earth. To put that scale into a pretty horrifying perspective, think about Mount St. Helens in 1980. That was a massive tragedy that flattened forests, and it was a VEI 5, releasing about 1 cubic kilometer of material. Then you have Mount Tambora in 1815, which famously caused the year without a summer. That threw out over 100 cubic kilometers. But a VEI 8 supervolcano like Toba, it doesn't just build a mountain. It acts like a massive underground pressure cooker. When Toba blew, it ejected a staggering 2,800 cubic kilometers of material. Just wrap your head around that. That is literally enough ash to bury the entire United States several inches deep. Section 2, the world at 74,000 BC. A truly crowded planet. You know, the world back then was actually incredibly diverse. Homo sapiens were just one of several human species wandering around. You had the cold-adapted Neanderthals up in Europe and West Asia, the mysterious Denisovans out in Siberia and East Asia, and the small-statured Homo floresiensis, sometimes called the hobbits, right there in Indonesia. And then there was our species, Homo sapiens, mostly hanging out in Africa with a few brave pioneer groups venturing out. Everyone was just navigating an already cool glacial climate, completely unaware that a massive geological time bomb was ticking away under Sumatra. Section 3. The volcanic winter. The great global cooling. Now, the immediate blast was unimaginably deadly, sending pyroclastic flows roaring at hundreds of miles per hour across Sumatra. But the true killer? That was invisible, lingering way up in the atmosphere. Global temperatures completely plummeted. And in the northern hemisphere, winters actually dropped by up to 10 degrees Celsius. And why did that happen? Because Toba pumped millions of tons of sulfur dioxide straight into the stratosphere. Up there, it reacted with water vapor to create this giant planet-sized mirror of aerosols, bouncing the sun's warming rays right back out into space. This crazy temperature drop triggered a terrifying, totally cascading ecological collapse. It's like a giant domino effect. First, the sun gets blocked out. Without sunlight, plants simply failed to photosynthesize, turning lush grasslands into total barren wastes. This leads directly to massive herbivores starving, which strips early humans of their primary food source. And if that wasn't bad enough, all that sulfur eventually falls back to Earth as toxic acid rain, while volcanic halogens likely collapse the ozone layer, letting in mutating ultraviolet radiation. It was, for sure, an absolute ecological apocalypse. Section 4. The near-extinction myth. Did Toba actually cause it? This whole situation brings us to a really massive question in human genetics. Scientists have known for a while that modern humans have surprisingly low genetic diversity, like way lower than chimpanzees. This strongly points to a genetic bottleneck, where our global population supposedly crashed to somewhere around just 3,000 to 10,000 breeding pairs. We were literally teetering on the edge of oblivion. In 1998, a super popular theory blames this near extinction almost entirely on the Toba eruption. But we have to ask, was Toba really the culprit?
Well, the old Toba catastrophe theory definitely makes for a fantastic movie script. You know, a sudden apocalypse that nearly ends us all in one fell swoop. But modern evidence actually points to a much less dramatic reality called the founder effect. It turns out our low genetic diversity wasn't a sudden cataclysmic wipeout. Instead, it was the result of gradual migrations. As small groups of our ancestors slowly trickled out of Africa over tens of thousands of years, they only took a tiny fraction of the overall gene pool with them, basically creating the illusion of a sudden population crash.
Section 5. Evidence of human survival. Let's look at the actual archaeological proof. Consider this absolutely remarkable finding from Toba, India. This spot was directly in the path of Toba's choking ash cloud. If the volcano had wiped everyone out, you'd expect to find human artifacts below the ash layer and absolutely nothing above it, right? But instead, archaeologists found a continuous, completely unbroken sequence of stone tools spanning tens of thousands of years right through that massive ash layer. The tools sitting above the ash were virtually identical to the ones buried below it. Our early ancestors didn't vanish. They literally just wiped off the volcanic dust and kept right on working. And then, thousands of miles away at Pinnacle Point in South Africa, we get to see exactly how they survived. Guided by these microscopic, hook-shaped volcanic glass shards that drifted all the way across the ocean, scientists were able to pinpoint exactly when Toba hit. And get this, instead of dying out, human activity in these coastal caves actually ramped up. They smartly moved to the coast, relying on stable marine ecosystems, like shellfish, that simply weren't as affected by the volcanic winter. They even started using their fires to heat-treat silkcrete rock, to invent sharper microblades, and utilized red ochre for complex social art. They didn't just survive this thing, they adapted and thrived. Section 6. If a supervolcano erupted today. Taking a look at our modern vulnerability. We have to remember that the Earth hasn't exactly stopped being active. There are about a dozen active supervolcano calderas on the planet right now. Yellowstone in the US is probably the most famous, but you also have Campi Flegrei right under Naples, Italy, Taupo over in New Zealand, and yeah, Lake Toba itself is still very much there. Now, don't panic. Actually, scratch that. Definitely don't panic. These giants are heavily monitored with advanced seismographs and satellites, and absolutely none of them are showing signs of erupting anytime soon. But they are ever present right beneath our feet. If one did happen to blow today, we certainly wouldn't go extinct, but man, we would face a devastating timeline that would severely test our modern world. Phase 1 brings localized, total destruction from shockwaves and pyroclastic flows. Phase 2 sees a massive continental ash plume that collapses roofs, totally grounds global air travel, and destroys power grids. But Phase 3 is the truly terrifying part for the rest of the globe, sunlight dropping by up to 20%. In our highly interconnected, fragile global society, major agricultural belts would simply fail. We'd be staring down collapsed food chains and, frankly, massive economic devastation. But honestly, looking back at the Toba eruption gives me an incredible sense of hope. Think about it. 74,000 years ago, our ancestors completely conquered a multi-year global winter. They didn't have heated homes, they didn't have global supply chains or satellite communication. They just had stone tips, fire, and each other. They used their wits and the strength of their communities to push right through that gray mist and survive. So I'm going to leave you with this to ponder. Knowing that we are a species quite literally forged in the fires of a supervolcano and that we are the direct descendants of those incredibly tough pioneers, what impossible challenge will our remarkable adaptability conquer next?
Please like and subscribe.